Okay, we're going to have a look at another tool for selecting. This is probably going to be the last one for now, and that is the quick selection tool. I may have briefly mentioned it when I was talking about the Magic Wand tool. The shortcut is W, and remember you can shift W and it'll cycle between the two of these, but we want the quick selection tool here. Straight away we're going to notice there's a few options up the top here. Just bring up my layers panel, and first one we're going to see, besides these options here, which is our new selection tool, our add, and our subtractor selection. So I'm going to go to make sure it's on the new selection. We have an option here with different brush sizing, and there's our little cursor here. Now you can adjust your brush size. I'm going to go B for brush by hitting the square brackets on your keyboard next to the letter P. This one here is going to subtract. This one here is going to increase your brush size, so you can make a brush really big or really small accordingly. I'm going to step that back. Now obviously there are other ways of doing this. As in Photoshop there are multiple ways, and you know, one way could be just jumping back to our quick selection tool. Quick selection tool, not one tool. Is we can jump into this option here and adjust our size here. Disadvantage here is you can't actually see it until you move it off there, but you know, and this is kind of a really amazing tool. Sample all layers obviously means that if I'm on an empty layer, which I am at the moment, and I try and select this blue area, it's gonna still allow me to select it. If I have that turned off, Control D to deselect, and click, it's kind of gonna get a little bit confused, and it's you know, it's not really selecting anything because that layer is actually blank. So if it's something visible and it's on a different layer and you still want to select it, make sure sample all layers is ticked on. Auto enhance, do have a play around with this, and the way that quick selection works is you typically want to start roughly in the middle of the area that you want to select and then drag out. So I'm going to actually click on the layer that I want to work from, which is the robot layer, and I'm going to click, and it's done a pretty big job of this. Now this object it's going to have a pretty easy time with because it is quite simple, but as we get into more complex stuff, it's going to, you know, really start playing up nicely. And simply what we do is we click, and then we can click and then drag further out. If we want to subtract from an area, again, Alt, we can click and drag. Now this tool is actually supposed to be fairly intuitive to use, and we'll see later on when we start dealing with you know, large areas, more complex shapes. It is going to involve you dragging in and out using Alt to subtract areas that you don't want, and then try and refine further. Do try the auto enhance sometimes. It works a bit better. Sometimes it can get a little bit finicky, but have a play with that. You also have an option to select and mask straight away, but we'll get into that anyway. But we will look at this one. It is an absolute time saver, quick selection tool, and don't forget that once you've got that selected, if it's still not to your liking, you can switch to other selection tools, lasso tool or whatever, to help you out with that. So if it's still being finicky, you know, don't stress it too much. Find another tool that works as well. So you know, you might go, you know, we don't want that bit, or we do want that bit, or whatever, and then we can select all that, duplicate, transform, mask, whatever's necessary.